Sometimes, the scary stories are not born from fiction. They come from real events, ones that haunt us long after they've happened. Tonight, you're going to hear one such story, a true, terrifying account that might just make you rethink what you know about the world around you. Story number 1. It all started in a small, forgotten town. You know the type, quiet, unassuming, a place where everyone knows everyone. But hidden beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful community was something no one could explain. Something no one dared to confront. I moved into the house on the outskirts of town about 3 years ago. It was old, creaky, but it had character. Everyone told me it had been empty for decades, but no one ever explained why. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine until one night, when things took a sinister turn. The screen flickers to a dark, empty room in the house. Strange knocking sounds echo through the walls. I heard knocking first, just light taps. I figured it was just the wind or the house settling. But soon, it wasn't just at night. It followed me everywhere, like it was trying to get my attention. At first, it was small things. Objects moving out of place, lights flickering. But, as the days went on, the presence in the house grew bolder. And much more terrifying. I'd wake up to chairs overturned, mirrors cracked. Once, I came home and found all the doors in the house wide open. But the worst was the feeling, like I was never alone. Like someone or something was always watching me. And then came the final night, the night when the unknown force made itself fully known. Show shadowy figures moving in the dark. The atmosphere becomes tense, with rapid cuts between lightning flashes and shadows creeping closer. I was lying in bed, and suddenly, the air felt heavy, oppressive. That's when I saw it, a dark figure at the foot of my bed, staring at me. I couldn't move. It was like I was paralyzed by fear. Then it spoke, just one word: leave. The very next morning, the storyteller packed up and left the house for good, never to return. I still don't know what it was, but something was in that house. And whatever it was, it didn't want me there. Some stories are best left untold, but when it comes to true horror, the truth can be scarier than fiction. Who or what was haunting the storyteller's home? We may never know, but what we do know is that not all things in this world can be explained. Thank you for watching. If you've ever experienced something unexplainable, leave your story in the comments below. Story number 2. It was the summer of 2017 when Sarah and her husband, Tom, moved into their dream house. The old Victorian-style home was everything they had ever wanted: tall ceilings, vintage woodwork, and plenty of space for the family they were planning to start. But there was one feature that always gave Sarah an unsettling feeling: the basement. The basement was a sprawling, cold, and dimly lit space that stretched the length of the entire house. In the far corner, hidden behind stacks of old furniture left by the previous owners, was a small, locked door. The realtor mentioned it had probably been used for storage, but the key had long been lost. Sarah and Tom didn't think much of it at first. Life was busy with unpacking, decorating, and settling in. But, as the weeks passed, strange things started to happen in the house. It began with the noises. At night, while Sarah lay in bed reading, she would hear faint scratching sounds coming from beneath the floorboards. Tom brushed it off as the house settling, but the noises became more frequent, and then more disturbing. There were whispers, soft, incoherent voices that seemed to rise up through the floor, chilling Sarah to her core. One night, after weeks of sleepless nights, Sarah decided to confront the source of the sounds. With Tom out of town for work, she gathered her courage, grabbed a flashlight, and made her way to the basement. The air down there felt colder than usual, almost oppressive. Her steps echoed as she walked toward the small door in the corner, which seemed darker and more foreboding than ever. She stood in front of it, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch the handle. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from inside the room, as though something heavy had been thrown against the door. Sarah stumbled back, her heart racing. but she couldn't tear herself away. She had to know what was inside. She ran upstairs, grabbed a crowbar, and returned. With trembling hands, she pried open the door. It took all her strength, but eventually, the rusty lock gave way, and the door swung open with a loud creak. What she saw inside sent a shiver down her spine. The small room was empty, save for an old wooden chair in the center and strange symbols carved into the walls. The air inside was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something metallic, like blood. The chair was facing the corner, as though someone or something had been sitting there, watching the wall for years. As Sarah stepped into the room, the temperature dropped even further. She could see her breath in the cold air. Her skin prickled with a sense of dread she couldn't explain. Then she saw it. Carved into the floor beneath the chair was a single word, scratched so deep into the wood it looked like it had been made by claws. Leave. A sudden gust of icy wind rushed through the basement, and the door behind her slammed shut with a deafening crash. Sarah screamed, her flashlight flickering wildly as she ran to the door, yanking it open and fleeing up the stairs. That night, Sarah packed a bag and left the house, staying at a hotel until Tom returned. When she told him what happened, he was skeptical until he saw the room for himself. They called in a contractor to seal off the basement completely. They never unlocked that door again. To this day, Sarah refuses to talk about what she saw or heard in the basement. The house still stands, and the new owners have no idea about the room hidden beneath their feet. But every so often, when the wind is just right, neighbors claim they hear faint whispers coming from the old house, whispers telling them to leave. Story number 3. It was a quiet little town, nestled between a range of hills, where nothing much ever happened. Everyone knew everyone, and the days passed by in a peaceful monotony. But there was one place in town that people avoided at all costs: the house on the hill. The house had belonged to an old man named Mr. Wallace. He was a recluse, living alone after his wife passed away decades ago. He never spoke to anyone, never left the property, and his house, which once stood proud, slowly decayed over time. Rumors about Mr. Wallace spread throughout town. Some said he was crazy, others claimed he was dangerous. But one thing was certain: after he died, no one dared go near the place. That was until Sam moved to town. Sam was new in the area, fresh out of college and looking for a cheap place to rent. When he heard the old Wallace house was available, he jumped at the opportunity, ignoring the warnings from the locals. It's just an old, empty house, he told himself. What's the worst that could happen? The first few days were uneventful. The house was run down, with creaky floors and peeling wallpaper, but it had a certain charm. Sam spent his time cleaning, unpacking, and trying to make the place feel like home. However, it wasn't long before strange things started to happen. It began with small, almost unnoticeable things: lights flickering for no reason, a door that wouldn't stay closed, and footsteps faint, but unmistakable coming from upstairs when Sam was alone on the ground floor. One night, Sam was lying in bed, reading, when he heard the sound of a chair scraping across the floor in the room next to him. He froze, his heart pounding. He hadn't been in that room since moving in, and no one else was in the house. Gathering his courage, Sam got up, grabbed a flashlight, and slowly pushed the door open. The room was empty, but there, in the center of the floor, was a wooden rocking chair. It was still gently rocking, creaking with every sway. Sam tried to brush it off as his imagination, but deep down, he knew something was wrong with the house. Over the next few nights, the noises grew louder. Scratching sounds came from the walls, and sometimes he swore he heard whispers low, unintelligible, but filled with malice. The final straw came a week later. It was a cold, windy night, and Sam had been tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Around 2 a.m., he heard something that made his blood run cold: a knock at his bedroom door. It was soft at first, just a single, quiet tap. Then it came again, louder, more insistent. Sam sat up in bed, Heart racing. "Who's there?" he called out, but the only answer was silence. Then the knocking came again, this time from the window. Sam turned to look, and there, standing outside his second-story window, was the figure of an old man, his eyes hollow and his mouth twisted into a grimace. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his bony fingers tapped against the glass, over and over. Sam jumped out of bed and ran for the door, but as he reached it, the handle wouldn't turn. The knocking grew louder, more frantic. It was no longer just on the window, it was all around him, echoing through the house. Desperate, Sam threw his weight against the door, and finally, it burst open. He raced down the stairs, his breath coming in gasps, and ran out the front door into the cold night. He never went back to the house on the hill. Weeks later, the town's historian reached out to Sam after hearing his story. She told him something that chilled him to his core. Mr. Wallace hadn't died of old age, as people believed. He had been found dead in that very same bedroom, locked inside, tapping on the window, trying to escape.